Yo, what's up, everyone? This video, we're going to look at the two-game Monday slate for NFL. We got two-game primetime slate for today. We got some nice contests on both sites. So let's get right into it. Hopefully, you guys all had a good week one. Wasn't great Sunday for me. Had just made some mistakes and some players, just some things I didn't expect to happen, like Kirk Cousins only throwing 10 pass attempts the entire game. Never in a million years would I have imagined that, but just the way the game kind of went, and made some mistakes not going McCaffrey over Barkley, and then my defense sucked, even though we had the 49ers went Dolphins just because they were at home. Obviously, that was super bad, but then also the 49ers were only $100 more than the Dolphins, and I could have went there, but always have some things to regret. But good thing we have another slate to get right back to it, and then making sure week 2 is a great week for us. But I'm excited to talk about this slate. We have a really fun, exciting game in the first one with Houston and New Orleans. The second game is also it's not super appealing, but I do like the Denver side a little bit, and a couple Raiders just because they need, they have to have some offense, and it has to come from somewhere. So we'll talk about it. Appreciate it if you would drop a like on the video, and you can subscribe down below as well. At quarterback, I'm looking at two options, either Watson or Breeze. I'm not seeing myself going to Derek Carr or Flacco, unless you just want to get creative with it. But I think most of the production, or most of the highest projected quarterbacks are going to be Watson and Breeze. I think that's the highest likelihood that either one of those is in the winning lineup. I'm going to go with Drew Brees, who's a little cheaper than Watson. He's playing at home. Last season, Drew Brees, he's a dome quarterback. He's good on the road too, but at home is where he had all of his biggest games. And last season, he averaged at least 5 or 6 more Draftkings points at home in the dome compared to on the road. It's just a really good environment for offense. The Superdome, it's the Texans. They aren't very good against the pass. Breeze will definitely have his chances to throw the ball, and he has some great weapons. Still has Kamara, still has Michael Thomas, and then they upgraded at tight end too. So I love Drew Brees at the quarterback at 6,200. At running back, you have a couple of guys. Kamara is obviously going to be the top running back on this two-game slate. I also think Philip Lindsay is really, really cheap. He had some huge games last season for the Broncos, and he's only 5,200. I think he's a kind of a tough pass. Josh Jacobs, I like him. He's gonna get most of the workload for the Raiders. We'll see if they go to him on passing situations. I think they might go to a guy like Jalen Richard, but if you don't want to play him against the Broncos, against their solid defense, I understand. The Broncos weren't great last season defensively. They still gave up almost 120 yards per game. Coming out of Alabama, he was has the ability to be a really good running back in the league. Just at 5,000, I like him. And that's kind of it. Those are the three running backs I like, and then Carlos Hyde as well. He's just really cheap, 3,900. We don't really know how the role is going to play between him and Duke Johnson, but I don't see Duke Johnson getting more than like 10 attempts on the ground. He's more of a pass-catching back. I think Carlos Hyde at 3,900 is a pretty good bet to get some traction this week. But I'm going with Kamara at 85. Just feel like he's the safest. Got to lock him in there. Without Ingram this year as well, that just opens up all the more upside for him. He's not going to have to split some carries with Ingram. Should get most of the work on the ground. He's also a huge factor in the passing game. Just a ton of upside for a guy like Alvin Kamara, who had 96 catches last season and had 969 yards on the ground. Just was close to 1,000 yards rushing and got almost 900 yards receiving, getting a ton of targets at home. Should be a very high-scoring game here. Love Kamara at 85. Then going to go Philip Lindsay at 52. Just think he's too cheap. The Raiders were absolutely terrible against the ground last season. One of the worst teams in the league, giving up 140 yards per game, and they haven't got any better this year. Their team is just not very good. They're very young. They got a lot of rookies, especially on the offensive side. But defensively, they should get gashed on the ground once again this year. And Lindsay at only 5,200 is a really good bet to have a really solid game. And at the wide receiver position, you got DeAndre Hopkins as your most expensive guy at 8,000. Between him and Michael Thomas, I'm leaning towards Michael Thomas just because Thomas is at home, and I expect Marshawn Lattimore to shadow Hopkins, and he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Not saying that Hopkins can't have a good game against him, just feel a little more comfortable with Michael Thomas at 7,800. If you can only fit in one, I would go to Michael Thomas, just because he has an easier matchup, and he's not gonna have to be covered by Marshawn Lattimore. Thomas and Breeze. Also, I'm playing Drew Brees at quarterback, so Breeze Thomas stack makes a lot of sense. Thomas just such a good weapon, one of the best receivers, and he got paid 141 receptions last season. Gets a lot of love in the red zone too. He's a big guy. They like to throw to him when they get near the goal line. Had some huge targets last year. Had some monster games. He should have another incredible season, and in a matchup against the Texans, they do give it up against the pass, and Thomas going to get a lot of the targets from Drew Brees. If you look at the depth chart here for the Saints, they got Michael Thomas, and he got some other guys like Ted Ginn, Smith, and Kirkwood. They're not going to get a ton of targets. So Thomas is super safe and has monster upside. And then if I do think that Hopkins is gonna be covered by Lattimore, and it's not gonna be as easy of a matchup, I love to go to a guy like Will Fuller here at 53, just because Fuller has monster upside. If Hopkins can't get open, Fuller and Watson have great chemistry. The only concern with him has always been health. He always gets injured. But when he's not injured, he has had some monster games with Watson at the quarterback. Watson loves to throw the ball deep, and Fuller has incredible speed and could have a really big game here. He's also very cheap at 53, so I love Will Fuller. And then at the flex, I think you can look at a couple of options here. I like Emmanuel Sanders a lot at 55. I like Josh Jacobs, like I said. I like Tyrell Williams at 44, just because some offense is going to have to come from somewhere from this Raiders team. He's going to be the number one guy on the outside, and he's not a bad receiver. Before the Chargers got all the weapons with Mike Evans and Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen, he was their best receiver, and he was getting a lot of targets there. That should happen here for the Raiders with Derek Carr. He's cheap at 44. I think he makes for a nice cheap option. Then you could always go with the running back as well, with Carlos Hyde at 39 if you need some savings. But I'm just going to go with Emmanuel Sanders. He doesn't have Demaryius Thomas this season. Thomas got, he's on the Patriots. He's got hurt last season, tore his ACL. But Sanders here at 5,500. He also got injured at the end of last year. But he still has game-changing speed. He still has big-time upside. He gets a new quarterback. Case Keenum was fine. He still targeted Sanders, but Flacco was not the best quarterback. We all know, but Flacco and Sanders, they did have some connection here in the preseason. And at only 5,500, he's going to be their number one wide receiver, facing a Raiders team that is not very good defensively. And I expect the Broncos to put up some touchdowns here. And I think there's a good chance it could come from a guy like Sanders and Lindsey. So I'm going to get both of them here as part of the core. But that's it for this video. And like I said, if you're stacking teams, I love we'll just talk about, some other players you can look at. On the Texans, I like Watson a lot. Watson and Breeze are where I'm looking at my quarterback. At running back, I'm not going to pay $6,000 for Duke Johnson. I'd rather go to Carlos Hyde on the team. I love Will Fuller. If Kuti is in, Kike Kuti, I like him a lot at $4,000. And then you could punt with their tight end if you know who's going to be starting there. But a lot of the work should come from Hopkins and Fuller and Kike Kuti if he's in there. On the Saints, they have Jared Cook now at the tight end. That's a big upgrade. If you want to pay up there, you can do that at 49. He's probably the highest projected tight end. The other three teams don't have tight ends that should get a ton of love, except for the Raiders, depending on if they start the rookie, who I do think they will. But I like Thomas and Kamara. If you can punt with Ted Ginn, I would do that. He's probably the second favorite receiver on the team. On the Raiders, I like Josh Jacobs. I like Tyrell Williams. and I like Walker. Those are my not even it's Waller at 3,400. Waller, he's looked really good in the preseason. He's going to get an opportunity. He's only 3,400. This slate doesn't have any top tight end besides Cook. So you got him and Cook, and then you got a bunch of guys that probably going to be splitting time with another tight end. But he should get some love here. Should be a love. I mean, he's not even a rookie. I think it's his second year. But he was really good in training camp, as you see here, and he was pretty good in the preseason. So, as without Antonio Brown, they're going to need somebody to throw the ball to, and he could get some more targets, especially in that since they traded away Jared Cook. That's opened the door for him to get to be the top tight end. And that's kind of it on the Broncos. I like those two guys in Sanders and Lindsey. And that's kind of it. And then you could go with their tight end as well. But I don't see myself really going to Freeman at 43 with Carlos Hyde cheaper. I do think you could go to Sutton as well. But that's it for this 2-game slate breakdown. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you could drop a like down below. And good luck to